Hello, those that are hopping on our Growing and Developing Future Para Swimmers swim session. We are going to just hold off for a couple minutes as we allow everyone to hop on the call, and I will do the introductions here in a minute. Okay, welcome again to the Growing and Developing Future Para Swimmers session of the 2020 Virtual Great Lakes Games. We at GLASA are so sad we weren't able to see all of you in person this year, but we're thrilled that you're able to join us for this session. We first want to thank all of our wonderful sponsors. Before I begin, I want to go over a couple housekeeping items. In order to avoid any background noise, all attendees have been placed on mute for the duration of the session. If you do have any questions for the panelists, please make sure to use the Q&A button rather than the chat. When using the chat function, please make sure to change your message to be sent to all panelists and attendees. Feel free to go ahead and introduce yourself and say where you're from. Without any further ado, I'd like to introduce to you Glenn O'Sullivan, a longtime GLASA coach, national swim team coach for Team USA, and a swim classifier.
Hey everyone, welcome to this presentation. It's going to be pretty exciting. We've got a very good guest. Peggy Ewald has been around swimming for a long time. I've worked with her at many meets. She is a retired swim coach from Ohio Northern University. I think I got that right. She's done 3 Paralympic Games in 08, 12, and 16 and I did the 16 games with her. And without further ado, I'm going to turn this over to Peggy. She's got to find that unmute button.
Peggy, the unmute button should be at the bottom left of your screen.
It might be in the top right corner of your picture, your video picture.
Wiggle your mouse over it.
Okay. Unmuted, correct?
You are unmuted. So here is Peggy, everyone.
Welcome. I'm having a few technical difficulties sharing my screen, apparently. It started to share prior to, so I'm trying to get that back to where it needs to be for you. So I apologize. Are we there? Are we back to the beginning?
Yes,
You are all good, Peggy.
Awesome. So I apologize for that. I'm really excited to be able to share with you some information that will help you with your background of what U.S. Paralympic Swimming is doing to grow our grassroots of para swimmers. Like all grassroots development processes, it starts with a vision that typically includes efforts to improve the number of participants that we have in our pipeline, and to, of course, increase the level of performance within that pipeline for a more competitive group of individuals. So some of the things that I want you to be able to take away today is some basic knowledge of our governing body, which is called our NGB, what the footprint of the pipeline of para swimmers is as of now, some of the basic swimming expectations, whether you're an an able or disabled athlete, what the basics are regarding swimming classification system, coaching and training considerations for all coaches and for athletes to understand, what our para-swimmer progression is currently, and then what the para-specific competitions in that progression would look like. And then what's next for some of you as a para-swimmer? What are some of the steps that will help you move up that pipeline? And then we want to end with some definite Q&A time for you to ask your questions. Our governing body for competitive swimming functions both under the umbrella of the Olympic and Paralympic under the USOPC, which stands for the United States Olympic and Paralympic Committee. So USA Swimming handles the Olympic side. US Paralympics Swimming handles the side of athletes with disabilities that are eligible disabilities as we know them to be EI or eligible impairments. The primary function of an NGB is to help facilitate sport. No matter what else they do within that, they are charged with developing sport through education and partnerships to offer support and development of those to support the athletes and coaches. They do develop progressions. Those are usually outlined and available for everyone to be able to look at to assist coaches and athletes to move up their pipelines. So we do this through talent identification, through identifying grassroots entry athletes all the way up to the national team. That support also extends into camps and clinics being offered, and then through the support and offering of competitions that are para-specific. The footprint of some of the initiatives that we began in 2017 to the present are introduction clinics. This picture is of a group that attended an intro clinic in Wisconsin, somewhat near you. Had a really good turnout. This was one of our largest. I think we had almost 60 athletes and coaches at this session, which was really great. The high school team and some of the club team came in to help with these athletes, and it's really a great opportunity to help develop some grassroots entry, increase the entry level participant. So in 2017, we had 103 participants at these intro clinics around the nation. In 2018, that increased to 130. And last year in 2019, we had 145 attendees. So last year, we began adding coach-only workshops to these. So we would do an introduction clinic and then follow with an additional workshop just for the coaches to expand their toolbox to work with those athletes. And we had 38 attendees in just 2 of those workshops. So growing not only the para-swimmer pipeline, but also growing our coaches pipeline so that they can then go out into their communities and help these athletes move along. Out of this, in 2017, we had 67 new athletes classified. In 2018, we had 84 athletes classified. And in 2019, we had 107 athletes classified. So when we track and look at this information, we see that the growth trend is moving more people into our pipeline and that these initiatives are being affected. So we're going to continue to implement these programs. There will be an online version of both of these clinics developed for hopefully later in July. Because we can't do our on-site ones right now, we don't want to not offer something, so we're going to try and roll these into a virtual clinic, much like this camp has done and these games have done for you. It's definitely helping to partner and move us closer to getting an increase in the pipeline and moving those grassroots efforts up. So let's take a look at how this is rolling out and how this is actually rolling over into our emerging group through our national team. We see in a games year, you can look through this team, our national team A, B, C, and then emerging. The emerging group is yellow because this is where we just begin to track our athletes. They've met their first real para standard. And so in 2016, a games year, typically that number is going to be at the highest in a quad. In 2017, we're ramping that up in some areas, meaning there were more people who had come into the pipeline continuing to move up. But you'll see our national A, B, and C group has taken a little bit of a break. And the NA means we did not have a national C group in 2016 and 17. Once you were on the national team, you were an A or a B athlete. We've added a layer because of the numbers increasing. So that tracking then in 2018 started to increase. In 2019, a year out from the games is typically going to be at its highest and carry over into the games year of 2020. You can see that our numbers greatly increased at the high level, elite level athlete. But in 2020, you can see that this is only 1.5 meet standards being made because then COVID hit. So none of our meets have happened to allow those numbers to show an adequate correlation for 2020. Men's side and women's side definitely showed a huge increase. The number of athletes that we have at that elite level has grown and will continue to grow with our efforts happening at the grassroots level. So some of the things that happen for basic competitive swimming in general, the expectations, no matter what, are going to be set out for every sport. In swimming, which is a very complex sport, those expectations become very complex. They're very similar on the para side as they are on the traditional side. So Olympic and Paralympic sides have similar expectations. However, it's very easy to enter the sport of swimming from the standpoint that there's not a lot of equipment required. The cost to enter the sport is very minimal compared to a lot of the para sports where you have to have a lot of equipment. It's very, very economical to enter the sport of swimming at the entry level. It may get more expensive as you move up because you start to wear technical suits that are expensive, but nowhere in comparison to if you were in track and field and you had to have different chairs and different running legs and all of those other equipment purchases that would have to be made. So the cost in the beginning to enter the sport is pretty inexpensive. However, we also have one additional difference in all other land sports. The medium of water that we participate in is constantly moving. It's an unstable ground. So it takes longer just because of the nature of water and the medium that we compete in and move in. For you as an athlete, with or without a disability, to progress, it's going to take more work, it's going to take more dedication, it's going to take a strong focus on your skills in order to continue to move up. So that is a big contributing factor that, unlike any non-water sport, does not necessarily have. The foundation of all competitive swimming, for athletes and parents, these expectations might look something like this. You're going to have to go through a Learn to Swim program. It has to be a formalized program. You have to progress through that, accomplishing the skill sets. If it's not a formal lesson program, private lessons that are consistent and they're progressing your skills, not just getting you safe in the water, but adding the next layer to that safety issue, but getting your skill sets there. You must develop a realistic expectation of the development process. It doesn't happen overnight, and where you are may be different than one of your friends. And it is a realistic expectation that it's not going to happen overnight. It takes time. You need to research organized competitive teams in your area. Find which one might match you by going and attending a practice and kind of watching the flow of that team, the flow of the coaches, how they interact with their athletes, how the team interacts with each other. Get a sense of feel for the culture within that team, and then research what it takes to become a team member with one of the teams that feels comfortable to you and feels like one that you can become a team member with. From there, I would recommend, sitting down, scheduling a meeting with the coaches and the staff to see how you can fit into their program and how they can fit into your needs. Then meet the expectations of team members. Meet whatever it is that all the team members have to meet. Develop a plan with those coaches then on how you are going to progress within their team. Have that communication, have that plan in place so that you know what direction you're going and they know what direction they can assist you with. And then the next step is that you attend one of my intro clinics. One of the US Paralympic intro clinics will provide you then a more in-depth look into how do you get into our pipeline? How do you learn more about US Paralympics? And what does that arena offer you? So in our introduction clinics, you can see this is another group, an intro clinic I did last summer in Alabama. Again, a lot of these swimmers are entry level. They've never been outside of their team experience, and they're just trying to find out how do they learn more about paraswimming. It's free. US Paralympics funds me traveling around the nation regionally to offer these. And it's an investment that these people have made in themselves and in their coaches. And it consists of 2 hours in the classroom, learning more in depth about US Paralympics and how that progression works. And then a 2-hour pool session where we get the athletes in the water. We have usually volunteers from the organized club helping and supporting. Usually their club members get in the water and I'm directing their coaches, and we're giving feedback from the standpoint of, okay, let's try this, or let's take a look at this. So basically I'm adding some tools to the toolbox of the coaches and to the athletes on how they can progress with where they are right now in the pool that day. Typically, the attendance would include any disabled swimmer that's not classified, disabled swimmers of any age, coaches of those swimmers, and parents of those swimmers. And then any other people from the community. We've had some other PTs attend who might have been working with a para-athlete. We've had a lot of people just interested from the community who have also joined us in those clinics. From there, we'd like the coaches to move into one of our coaches only workshops. Again, no fee to attend this. Usually the plan for this year was to tag them all onto an intro clinic to save time and money and travel for the participants. We have planned 6 for this year. Obviously, none of those rolled out because they would have started in March. And we all know what restraints we've been under. So this comprises 2.5 hours of classroom session for the coaches to learn some specific adaptations for all the different sport classes that we have found to be most effective, and just, again, tools to put in the toolbox to pull out wherever it's needed individually for that para swimmer. We'll go through specific training and workout planning for all the different sport classes so that the coaches can better match up what they're doing for their athletes without a disability, and then how could they adapt that workout for the para athlete to function within their practices. We use a lot of video demonstration and examples, and I also expect the coaches to actively participate. I make them participate in some of the exercises by taking away an arm, a leg, making them a wheelchair-bound athlete, because I think a lot of the learning is done through experiencing themselves as a coach, what it is their athletes have to work with and what they don't have, and how are we going to move them through this medium, unstable water with what they have to work with. So sometimes it's easiest and that learning curve is shortened by putting the coaches, through that themselves. So some basics of classification. This is completely a topic that generates a lot of interest, a lot of controversy, and is something I encourage everyone to stay out of and let the professionals handle it. It's something that must be done after the swimmer knows how to swim, they've been active in the sport locally, and they want to participate in a formalized swimming program at this point. So then classification would become an option. Until then, provisional classification opportunities are simply that. It's a provisional. It's no, it's a baseline, but it doesn't automatically put you into the system, and it doesn't equal what a formalized classification situation and process would involve. So there is formal classification procedures for national classification and for international classification. So let's review just a few basics. We're not going to go into this at great length. It is a process for functional classification by World Para Swimming. It's based on your maximum abilities, and that classification is required to participate in any specific Paralympic meet. National classification and international classification for swimming has 3 categories. Physical impairment, labeled as the PIs, and the visual impairment as VI, and intellectual impairment as IIs. The main goal is determine if the athlete is actually eligible. If their impairment, EI as we call it, eligible impairment, if it actually fits the categories. From there, it groups the para swimmers with the eligible impairment based on their activity limitation and ability. It provides a sport class status, and it provides rules that apply to that sport class. It provides structure and competition, and it ensures sporting excellence as best it can. So as the result of a classification process, the athlete would be assigned a sport class. So in para swimming, we have 3 assignments due to the fact that we have multiple strokes. So the athlete would end up with an S, an SB, and an SM sport class. So it would look something like this. Say an athlete has an S9 for freestyle backstroke and butterfly, but in breaststroke, they drop down a level because of range of motion inability. So they would be assigned an SB class of 8, potentially, not always. And then for an individual medley, SM classification, maybe they go back up to the 9. So it's not uncommon to see different sport class up and down based on the strokes that the classification has been assigned to. So is the classification used in all meets that a para-athlete might participate in? And that is, the system would be fully used in all para-specific meets, domestically and internationally. It may not be used in USA swimming meets, although there are some meets that have a simplified system assigned to it that would allow a para swimmer to participate or earn points for their team. Some high schools have begun to utilize a simplified system to allow a para athlete to compete at the high school state qualifier type meets, but maybe it's not implemented at any of their dual meets. Collegiately, NCAA rules do not specifically apply a scoring based on para sport class. It's something that under the NCAA rules, they cannot have separate rules for a class. Everyone is under the same umbrella, just within different divisions. So we will not see that happening, although we have seen some regional invitationals that allow para athletes to compete, but those are something very separate from the traditional NCAA system. So when we talk about coaching and training considerations for para, for coaches, for athletes, for anyone involved, we really, that could be an entire presentation in and of itself, and multiple presentations actually. But for today's focus, we're going to stay on some key concepts, and that's primarily going to be that the foundation of coaching skills and biomechanics that allow an athlete in swimming to succeed with or without a disability is the same. The foundation is the same. We come from the same premise, whether we're working with a para athlete or working with one without a disability. So the basic coaching skills that coaches should possess isn't rocket science for para. Most coaches should have, or we hope that they have, that toolbox of skills and the aptitude to apply the same concepts to any swimmer individually. So we hope that then they have the ability to make accommodations individually for the para swimmer as they would an injured athlete without a lifelong disability. So let's talk about what an athlete really needs and what an athlete wants. And then let's talk about what would be the same and what would be different for a para athlete. So what is the same? Biomechanically, the development of all strokes begins from the same foundation. Physiological training development model is the same. And the expectations that we have for all of our athletes participating in the sport should be the same. What are the adaptations to consider? Biomechanically, we must use what the athlete has to work with, and then we adjust from there. Physiologically, on the training side, again, we apply what they can do, and then we adjust. Expectations across the board is expect the best and adjust to what their best is. So biomechanically, the same things apply. We're going to look at balance in the water, body position and streamline in the unstable medium of water. We're going to seek to find the path of least resistance. We're going to seek to find the path of efficiency above and below the water. We're going to seek development of arm and leg movements. And we're going to seek to improve and perfect starts, turns, skill development. What are the adaptations to all of that we must make? Is that we must use physically and emotionally what the athlete has to work with. From there, the foundation stays the same, and then we go from there. Training philosophy wise, again, it's the same progression of training through the standards within the sport. So we have levels of progression of improving from learning to swim to advancing through those levels to a competitive team. Within that competitive arena, we have levels of progression, and then we in parasport have levels of progression as well. So the progression of training remains the same. What do we need to adapt to those things? Quality over quantity per the sport class specifics and according to the athlete's ability level. The training typically can follow along with the disability sport class by percentage. That's an easy way for coaches to begin making their adaptations to the workout that they wrote for their athletes without a disability, to adapting that same workout to the para athlete. So, for example, it might look like this. So an S3 is on the lower side of ability level, meaning that their disability is typically going to be a spinal down injury or progression of a disease or some form of paralysis. And so that athlete would require a reduction to 30 to 50% of a typical workout based on the athlete's ability. An S7, the middle ground of our classes, meaning middle ground, it's between, you know, our S1 and S14, they could probably attend to 60 to 80% of a typical workout design. And again, based on the athlete or the swimmer's ability. An S14 who is physically similar to an athlete with no additional disability, our S14s are intellectual II athletes, they could do the same physical workout because they have no other impairments other than intellectually. However, emotionally, they may need some adjustments. For example, some S14s need to get up and go and need to do something fast every day. So you might have to put in some kind of a race challenge or a fast 50 off a block or a small little set that would allow them to get up and do something fast every day. Or you might have to give them a physical copy of the workout so that they can stay on task. You may have to have a set plan for them, meaning that they like routine. So you might have to make sure that you're following a pattern that they can get accustomed to. As far as energy system modifications, simply modify according to the disability and know what's normal for every athlete. Heart rates may vary under the normal standards for a disability that is of a lower class that's not using the bigger muscle groups to move through the water. So those are the considerations in general. Not that there aren't more, but those are the basics for you to understand. So some of the specific biomechanical considerations that we're going to look at are going to be some video introduced here and some pictures. These pictures were of intro clinics that we did. Actually, my college swimmers are in the background here. I brought my college swimmers in to help and get in the water and give them some community service work as well. And this particular athlete here on the left side is severely impaired and is safe in the water. She's been in the water long enough to be safe, but not for a full length of the pool on her own. So we pair them up one by one, but love the water. And so these are what introduction clinics are for, is to get these people into the water. Here are some lower sport class adaptations. For a lower class athlete, we may have them sitting on a block because they can't stand to start on top of the block, but they can sit to enter the water. They may be on backstroke, this middle one, because this is a short statured athlete, can't reach the bar. So a rope is an assisting device that has to be approved at a pair meet. And so the rope is lowering that starting bar down for her. And then on the left, this athlete has one hand on the deck being held steady by a coach. So again, these athletes right here would have what we call an assist provided in the rules of their classification process that would allow them to have an assist to start. We're going to play a little video for you. Here are two athletes on this left-hand side, both using a different starting device to extend that bar down to the water level for them. And we'll just watch this. So you can see that both of those athletes needed an assist to help them. Neither one had full hands to grasp onto anything. And one was able to have a little bit more kick. So again, the classification, I can't tell you what they were, but they were definitely of a lower class. On this side, we're going to watch an athlete who needed a different start of a in-water start with the feet being held to the wall by a coach. My introduction to para swimming started with an athlete, an S3, and this is how I started her. And again, double arm backstroke is a stroke that many S3s employ. You can see across this board, other athletes are using two arms alternating. It just depends on the athlete, which one is faster. Oops. Okay, in this slide, we're going to look at what's called a U-turn. This is where the athlete is not able to do a flip turn because they are, they do have lower body impairments that don't allow them to do a flip turn. And so we teach them to do what we call a U-turn because it simply looks like a U-turn. They come in on one side of the lane and they touch the wall with usually one side that's present. They can push off because they have touched that pad, and they can push and turn to go make the change of direction. Now that was a pretty tight U, a very narrow U. Some of our athletes take a little wider U, just depending on their ability and the perfecting of that particular turn. Watch it again here so you can get a better glimpse of it. She came right in the middle, pushed off, took a nice long strong stroke. And you can see the left arm cannot recover above the water because she doesn't have the range of motion there. So you do see she is working with what she has to work with. This is a VI training adaptation that is very easy for teams to implement that allow you to not have two people tapping an athlete. This is a long course pool, so running from one end to the other to tap an athlete for turning for a visually impaired athlete is just about impossible. You can do it, I've done it. But in order for a coach to not have to do tapping or two additional staff persons, just putting a simple sprinkler at the tee will allow those athletes to feel that and know that the wall is coming up and they can make their turn from there. So this shows you a nice wide spray across the lane. And as the athlete swims through it, they feel that and they know that they have so many strokes then into the wall. This is at the Olympic Training Center before renovations. So this is being tied to a hose back on the wall, and there's one at the other end as well. So again, no staff is needed to tap those athletes. They function in a training opportunity just like the rest of their team, and they're at workout with the rest of their team. Sprinklers are not used at meets. That's simply for a training adaptation. So for a visually impaired athlete, we have to tap them in competition. Those tapping devices that tap their back, shoulder, head, chest must be approved at the meet, every meet, by the officials. So just know that as you progress up, those tapping devices become very important tools. Very cheaply made though. So let's take a look here. This athlete just got tapped, I believe, on the head. Again, athletes have their preference if they want tapped on the head, if they want tapped on the shoulder, if they want tapped underneath on the back, or if they want tapped on the chest. Just depends. And it is a skill, and the athlete must get comfortable with the coach, and they must get comfortable and trust each other to do that at all paces, especially in the meet. Athletes can be coming at a faster tempo, and you need to make that adjustment if you're the tapper to assist them to hit perfectly for a turn and to hit perfectly for a finish. Here's another example. This is actually during a competition. That was a tap to the back. And the athlete was able to time fairly well for that athlete because they extended and finished full stroke into the wall. So here's some basic butterfly adaptations. This is one of my athletes. This is Amanda Everlove. She was a 3-time silver medalist at 2008 Games, training as a resident athlete there. In a couple years later, after Games, she came to Ohio Northern, where I was the head men's and women's swimming coach collegiately, and entered our pharmacy program and finished her collegiate career and went on to 2012 Games in London with us, also representing her college team at the same time. And is now a doctor of pharmacy, which I'm very proud of her for going through that whole process and training for Games during it. So here she is. She was a butterflyer. She had 2 good legs. And so maximizing her kick started all back at the training center when she went into that program, took her through Games. That was her secret weapon. She has 1 dead arm from a horse injury back, I think she was 10 at that time, and 1 arm. So she's going to show you 2 different breathing patterns that she developed, but please take a look at her kick. It definitely, she's one of the best kickers. She could outkick just about everybody on our college team, and she did participate on our varsity squad because she was that good and was able to do that. So this is a side breath. You see how solid and strong her kick is in both directions. And this is just a 1-arm drill with side breathing. And this is at my college pool where we filmed these. Here she is. She's doing forward breathing. Every 2 strokes. You can see how well her kick is generated from the chest down. It's very strong, powerful, and goes all the way through to her feet. So again, using what the athlete has, maximizing it is always the adaptation that you want to do first. Here's some backstroke. This is going to show you an athlete with no arms and how they actually finish with their head. Of course, doing that without causing a concussion. The other is I want you to take a look at the legs and how strong that butterfly kick is. Again, using what the athlete has and really maximizing its ability. Very straight body line on the front part. And again, you could see him hesitate, just slow down a little bit as he touched the wall. Again, he's preserving, not crashing into it and causing himself a concussion there. So again, skill development with the adaptations that you're working on. Here is another adaptation to backstroke. And again, you have seen this athlete before, but she is being assisted out of her chair and set down on the deck by her athlete or by her coach. Whoops, whoops, go back. You can tell she did not want to get down in the cold water. She kept herself from plopping down under. Because she can't get her feet up on that ledge that is now able to be used in the water. She sets her feet, which she doesn't have use of. She has a one-arm backstroke because the range of motion in that left arm does not give her any propulsion. It can't go above the water. So she does her backstroke with one arm. One thing I'll point out, you can see that her body position of the head and shoulder needs to be pressed back a little bit more into the water to get a little bit more range of motion with that arm that is working. So that's a skill set that could be worked on and developed a little bit more with her, which I know she's working on. This is Leanne Smith, one of our National A athletes. This is actually a 150 IM. You're going to watch her do breaststroke. So we'll just talk a little bit about this breaststroke adaptation. You'll notice that she's doing 2 strokes to 1 breath, very common way to swim. I even had some college swimmers that we trained them to do that because they were very inefficient when they took a breath. So there's nothing that says you must breathe every stroke in breaststroke, and no rules, no matter what rules you're following, but your head must break the surface. So you teach to stay down and horizontal as much as possible, streamline, but the head just has to pop up enough on that non-breathing stroke to effectively break the water. We've had athletes go as many as 4 and 5 and 6 strokes on 1 breath. But again, it's a training thing that has to happen. You don't just start out doing that. And now she's going to turn, make the change of direction, and come home in freestyle. So 150 IM for this class consists of 50 of back, 50 of breast, and 50 of free. All right, we're going to move on here. This particular video is again going to show you we have lanes 3, 4, and 5 here are all US team members. This is at Pan Pacs in Cairns, Australia. We have a start on this left side, assisted by the coach, holding balance. We have short stature starting as normal, and then in lane 5, no legs, but able to push, slingshot style. And again, the breathing patterns are what you want to look at. All taking 2 strokes to 1 breath. More efficient by keeping the body line horizontal and moving through the water in a less resistive manner. And our last video, I believe here, is freestyle. Again, what I want to point out, this is an athlete who cannot recover that left arm out of the water. Gets very little pull, but the hand is in a fist on that side to try and activate a little bit of a right angle to get a hold of some water. But the left hand or the right hand is doing most of the work there. There it is again. All right, how do you move up through the para progressions? This is a system that we devised this past year and have implemented now in order to be able to give our athletes and our coaches some distinct pathway up the pipeline so that you can plan to move up in an organized manner and have some target goals. So this is what it looks like. We have a foundational level that doesn't require classification. Sometimes national happens here. You should be with any aquatic type program. Competitions you might be competing in, but you might not be. It might be a local meet or a summer league meet. Then we move into Can-Am level. And you can see the classification requirement or the program and competition levels all the way through to the national team. So this is kind of the progression that we have implemented in order to give a little bit of structure and more information to those that are developing or looking to come into the US Paralympic pipeline. The para-specific competition progression then that goes along with that, the foundational competitions might be in any type of pool, 25-yard, no standards to enter those meets. National classification might be required and it might not be. Emerging then means that that athlete has moved up in the level of competition. They are conducted in 25-yard or 50-meter pools. No standards typically to enter those types of meets. National classification typically begins to happen and is often offered at these meets. The top level national or regional events are going to be in a 50-meter pool. They have time standards, either national, Can-Am. They are what we call a minimum qualifying standard, and those standards are on the Team USA website. So what might be next for all of you as you look forward into the pipeline of US Paralympics? Become a member of an organized swim club, so vital to your development and progress. Attend regular practice that is appropriate for your ability level. Attend local meets so that you have more competitive experience. Come to one of our intro clinics to get a more in-depth look. Encourage your coach to attend a workshop to learn some more specifics of adaptations from our national team coaches. Register for classification at the closest para-specific meet offering it. Once you are committed to the sport of para-swimming, connect with other para-swimmers, coaches, and parents. Learn to stay up to date on our website. Become familiar with the national progressions and standards if you're wanting to move up that pipeline. And most of all, be realistic about the expectations of your progress. It does not happen overnight. It does take work, as it does for athletes with or without a disability. So some of the great resources you have are the Paralympic website, Paralympics in general, which is the IPC and World Paraswimming website, your National High School Federation website, YMCA websites, USA Masters websites. For some reason, my USA Swimming website did not get on there. I apologize for that. It typically is on there, so I want to highlight that. USA Swimming website has a lot of information, and it is one of our most popular club teams that is helping produce our grassroots efforts. Not the only, but one of our strongest. So from there, I just want to thank you very much for attending today, and I think we're ready for some questions.
Yes, thank you so much, Peggy. That was a lot of really wonderful information. So we do have a handful of questions. The first one being, if someone's interested in joining a club, how do you suggest going about them finding one in their area?
I would research your area, first of all. And like I said at the very beginning of this presentation, go and watch a practice, kind of get a feel for it, see how the coaches interact, and then ask to schedule some time, not during practice, of course. Reach out to that club coaching staff and find out, if you can sit down and talk to them. It's a matter of developing a relationship and finding out what they require of team members, and then trying to meet those, sharing with them what your, impairments require, not what you want, but what you require. And then trying to help them, if they've never dealt with a para-athlete, get them into an intro clinic, get them on our website, have them reach out to us through US Paralympic swimming staff. And we certainly can help that process. But it's simply researching your area and finding what's available to you, and then sitting down and developing a relationship with that coach and that program.
Wonderful. And speaking of intro clinics, Mary asks, how are the intro clinics advertised? They specifically live in Memphis, Tennessee, and there's no adaptive swim teams there. But her 13-year-old daughter has been swimming with a developmental team and summer teams for a few years now.
So keeping up to date on the US Paralympic website, all of my clinics, there's a tab for athletes, and there's another link in there that says camps and clinics, and we post them all there. They're also sent out to disability chairs of USA Swimming. We send it to YMCA Swimming. It's sent out through our normal channels of where we get athletes. But if you're not in one of those systems to get that, then certainly checking the US Paralympic website regularly for those postings to find out where one might be near you. And then simply going to those links and flyers and registering.
Wonderful. And then I had another one come up about Mallory's turn, the video of her turn. Is that something that you can find on YouTube, just specifically of that turn? Because we were trying to find it as well.
It's actually not Mallory. It's Leanne Smith. It is not Mallory.
Okay.
Just to make that clarification. Not that Mallory doesn't have a nice turn. I just happen to have that one of Leanne because it was taken during one of our World Series meets where I was doing educational video capturing. So Where you can find that on YouTube, I can't tell you. But it certainly is something that would be probably out there. I think Mallory likely has some racing that she has posted. I'm not sure, but you could try to YouTube search. I know that US Paralympics swimming has posted some races that include our athletes doing that turn.
Okay, and I know Karen was the one who asked for that. So Karen, I'll also do some research and try to find a good example for that, because I know we'll have some good swimmers who will want to see that as well. But I think those are the majority of the questions that came in that weren't answered already. I'll give everyone just an extra minute here if we have any other questions that come in.
I have an answer on that, the question on Mallory. I did go looking for it. Most of it is information that she's done in interviews, but you can catch a glimpse of that turn that she does quite well. Liam Smith does a fantastic job of it also.
It's something that as a coach, you can get in the water and do it. I learned it as well myself. Pretty much most anything that I ask my athletes to do on my college team or my para work with athletes, I get in the water and do myself as a coach, because that's the easiest way to teach an adaptation then to what we typically would be doing. It's a very easy turn to learn. It takes a little perfection, because if you're racing and going a little bit higher tempo, you might come in on the wrong arm that you trained on. So you need to train both sides in case that happens. But it is a turn that is fairly easy to teach.
It looks like we had one more question come in during that time. Where can they find the videos from this presentation? Is there a specific spot?
No, these videos I have in my own library. We are creating an educational video library that will hopefully be included in coach education through US Paralympic Swimming to post. But right now, we do not post those, but just know that future goals of US Paralympic Swimming is to create more coach education that will provide video instruction that includes a lot of video library work.
Wonderful. So if there aren't any other questions, we'll go ahead and start to end this session here. We just want to thank everyone who attended. You were a wonderful audience that had some great questions. And I just want to remind everyone that there is another panel discussion this afternoon or at 5 o'clock Central Time about inclusion in high school and college athletics. And tomorrow there's a great one on using your voice as a pathway to success at noon Central Time. So we'll hope you'll join us for those. Have a wonderful day, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Peggy, great job. Hope to be working with you again on the pool deck.
Yes, I hope so sometime soon.
Yes. Take care.
You too.